Our son Joel played baseball for Michigan State. He was their catcher. And I used to like to sit between the on-deck circle and the plate so that I could get a good view of his work behind the dish, as we would say. And I remember this one game, we were playing against Indiana, and as far as the Spartan fans were concerned, the umpire could do no good. Balls should have been strikes, strikes should have been balls. I mean, they were just totally on the umpire. And quite frankly, I don't even remember if we won this game or not, but it was sort of embarrassing in a way. But after the game, Joel came up to me. I said, hey, that umpire must have done a poor job. You know, it just really was something. I don't get it. He said, no, he was fine. He was consistent. The strike zone, he said it pretty quick. We knew what it was. The strike zone was the same for both sides. I don't know what the fans are looking at, but he said it was a good called game. He said, you know, I'd probably give it a B+. You know, I mean, you make a few mistakes here and there, but he said, sitting behind the dish, game after game, I hear a lot of stuff, and of course, fans see what they want to see. It just depends on who's the home team, and that's just the way it is. Well, we do sometimes see what we want to see. We have a bias when we move into anything, and that bias it fuels us to a point, but it also blinds us. And we don't know it when we're blind sometimes. In the case of the upper room narrative, we continue on this story of Jesus with his disciples in the upper room the night before he was betrayed, and this continuing conversation before the actual meal. And Jesus recognizes that his disciples, as dedicated as they are, as hardworking as they are still really struggling to accept the fact that the Messiah is a pacifist. We're not going to be overthrowing Rome, kids. That's not going to be happening. And they struggle to fully accept that. And Jesus knows that for each of them, if the gospel's going to move forward, if the peace that surpasses all understanding is going to be employed, they have to get this down cold. And he says to them, he says, listen, I am not going to leave you orphaned. I'm going to send you the Spirit of truth so that you will remember my commandments and what it is you are supposed to do. And of course, the great commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart and mind, to love your neighbor as yourself, and to recognize the neighbor as everybody. Everybody. This is what they were told to do. The disciples, most of them are pretty young, and they've lived in a whirlwind experience over the last few years and have done a lot of good work with Jesus, have seen a lot of things. But nevertheless, Jesus recognizes that society, or the world as he calls it, has all kinds of other motivations and perspectives, and it can be easy to drift away from the mission on which they were given. They need to remember why they are here. And why they are here may be something different than what society is always looking for. I've heard it said that God is truth, and therefore truth is God. I send you the Spirit of truth. Jesus told a story about a king that tried to explain the kingdom of heaven. He said, when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. When I was lonely, you visited me. When I was naked, you clothed me. And the people said to the king, when have we done this? And the king said, whenever you've done this to the least of these, you've done it to me, because I am there waiting for you to arrive. You are my hands and feet, dear friends. You are the ones I'm expecting to change the world. You're the ones that will go out into the world and recognize the pain and suffering that exists because I've taught you, and you will become my hands and feet. I expect you to simply do this. And so, part of our focus is certainly on those who are hungry and thirsty, those who are living in poverty. There are a lot of people living in poverty, to be sure. But beyond those who are living in poverty, there's all kinds of sorts of situations that people live in that require our love and our care. And so we are invited to be paying particular attention to the world. Maybe not always to what we think is the best and brightest, but to imagine just who has been forgotten. What must it be like? Who are these children of God that Jesus is waiting with? Who are they? And what is our proper response? Do I have a good understanding? Can I become expert in understanding the needs of our society? Yeah, probably. It takes some time, it takes some energy, it takes some commitment, but I suspect that it is something that we need to do to be able to, in fact, become God's hands and feet. But it's, again, not only those who are in poverty, but all of us right here. Do we share our own unique needs with each other? Sometimes we do. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we struggle with being loved. Sometimes we just want to, I can take care of it myself. But it's not what we're called to do, is it? Now, these young disciples, they're moving into a very complex society, economically, politically, spiritually. It will be easy for them to drift from mission. And so Jesus says, remember, 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 I am sending you the Spirit of truth. With that said, the Spirit of truth, while it's always coming to the disciples, and it's always coming to us, it's always coming to me, it's always coming to you, all the time, I recognize that we need to stay focused on that. I need to be aware of it. I need to be open to it. I need to be willing to work with it. I need to allow my spiritual imagination to open up enough to recognize this world in which I live, profoundly complex, filled with opportunities to share mercy and grace and compassion, but I have to be open to it. I have to imagine it. I have to wake up in the daytime and say, yes, this is quite a ride on planet Earth. What will God have for me today? Seeking the Spirit, the essence of God, the still small voice that is always there. I think to do the work that Jesus wants us to do, to be as fully engaged as we can reasonably be, it's useful to create a healthy obsession, to become more aware, to stay focused by becoming focused, to put on the eyes of God and the hopes of God, to meditate on God's peace, to recognize I am endowed to make a difference in the world, to practice it in my mind and in my heart, everything I do, to start to fully allow my life to be impacted by God's grace and to recognize, as Martin Luther made it very clear, this faith can be taken into any and every context, and it is expected by the Christian to do so. That doesn't mean you're thumping a Bible and quoting verses. It just means that you are expressing God's love. I'm expressing God's love as I understand it. We're becoming absorbed in the peace. Now, we make mistakes. We all do. We all fall radically short of this wonderful idea. This stuff doesn't happen overnight. It takes work, it takes practice like anything else. Anything else in life that someone gets good at, and you can get good at this. Not perfect, but you can get good. It takes practice, it takes commitment, and it takes work. And it's okay, happily, if we fail. We worship a very forgiving God with a sense of humor as well. Where your treasure is, that's where your heart will be. That's what wakes you up in the morning. That's what you think about. That's what you talk about. That's what you read about. Where your treasure is. And whatever treasure we have, the good news, I think, on this Mother's Day is that we can turn our treasure into the peace. And when we do, we become God's hands and feet.